Have you ever felt that crazy tension of waiting for a storm to hit?
Oh yeah, like when the air gets heavy.
Exactly. You know that exact feeling. The sky gets that weird sort of bruised purple color. The air pressure drops so fast you can actually like feel an ache in your teeth.
Yeah, and everything just stops.
Right. The birds stop singing, everything goes totally dead silent, and you're just standing there looking at the horizon, waiting for the sky to finally break open.
It's a very specific kind of dread.
It really is. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a piece of art that perfectly engineers that exact feeling of suspended dread. We've got this massive stack of analytical notes and research in front of us, and it's all focused on just one song.
Just one, and a short one at that.
Right, Bob Dylan's incredibly brief, but just endlessly mysterious song, All Along the Watchtower.
It really is a remarkable piece of writing. And, it's deceptive in its simplicity.
Oh, totally.
The notes we've gathered, they don't treat this just as, like, a slice of 1960s musical history. They treat it as an absolute masterclass in how to extract the maximum amount of meaning from minimal information.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it honestly blows my mind how a song with barely a handful of verses, I mean, we're talking just a few lines of text here, has generated an entire universe of interpretation.
It's basically an entire academic field at this point.
Seriously. So the mission for us today is to figure out the mechanics of this. Like, how does extreme brevity, combined with these really unstable character voices and totally unresolved tension, create such a profound emotional landscape?
Well, the secret lies in how the song actually operates. It works entirely by pressure rather than, disclosure.
What do you mean by disclosure?
Think about what a standard song or a standard story does. It gives you narrative background, right? It offers psychological explanations for why characters act the way they do.
Right, it sets the scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it usually provides a stable moral framework so you know who the good guy is.
Yeah, you know who to root for.
But this song does none of that. It completely abandons all of that machinery and just drops you right into a dramatic situation.
Which brings us to the very opening lines, because the way it throws you directly into the action is, honestly, it's jarring.
It is.
It feels like walking into a room where two people are in the middle of a really intense, high-stakes argument, or, I don't know, looking down at your phone and reading a completely out-of-context text message from a friend who is just deep in a crisis.
That's a great way to put it. The literary term the research uses for that technique is in medias res.
Right, entering a narrative that's already well underway.
Exactly. Dylan opens with a dialogue between two archetypal figures, right?
Yeah.
The Joker and the thief. But notice, they aren't given biographies.
No last names, no hometowns.
Nothing. They don't have backstories. They're purely roles.
Wait, hold on. I want to pause on those roles for a second, because a Joker usually brings to mind someone playful, like maybe a prankster or some chaotic trickster figure.
Sure, yeah.
And a thief makes you think of someone sneaking around in the shadows, looking over their shoulder, maybe someone a bit sketchy or villainous. But right out of the gate, the lyrics completely flip those expectations.
They really do. And that reversal is the first thing that unsettles the listener. The Joker is the one who speaks first. And he doesn't sound like a trickster at all.
Not even a little bit.
He sounds incredibly distressed, panicked, and just completely disoriented. He immediately says, "There must be some way out of here."
Yeah, he's freaking out.
He is. He's complaining that businessmen are drinking his wine and plowmen are digging his earth. He is experiencing this complete, terrifying loss of meaning and personal agency.
And then the thief replies, and instead of being defensive or nervous, like you'd expect a thief to be, the thief is the one who is utterly calm. He's measured, he's reflective.
Almost philosophical.
Right. He essentially tells the Joker to take a breath. He says, "There are many here among us who feel that life is but a joke. But you and I, we've been through that, and this is not our fate."
Which is such a powerful statement.
And then he drops what might be the heaviest line in the whole song. "Let us not talk falsely now."
Yeah, that line is structurally crucial. It introduces an ethic of speech. It's a demand for absolute honesty without actually explaining what false talk would even be in this scenario.
Right, like what are they lying about?
Exactly. Is he warning the Joker against self-deception? Is he saying that empty comfort and false hope are dangerous right now? The lyric absolutely refuses to specify what the falsehood actually is.
So if the Joker is the one panicking about being robbed, and the thief is the one acting like a Zen philosopher, Who are we actually supposed to trust?
That's the million-dollar question.
Honestly, the thief's extreme calmness in the face of whatever crisis they're running from feels almost more terrifying than the Joker's panic.
Yeah, that confusion you're feeling is exactly the dynamic at play here. The analytical notes refer to this as interpretive instability.
Interpretive instability.
Right. It is a deliberate design choice. Because we aren't told who holds the ultimate authority or who actually understands the situation better, the song forces you, the listener, to do the heavy lifting.
We have to figure it out ourselves.
The research calls this interpretive labor. You have to decide who holds the truth. The meaning doesn't come from a single clear statement. It's generated by the friction and the tension between their conflicting worldviews.
Okay, so we start with this incredibly intimate, sort of claustrophobic conversation. Two guys trapped in a tight space of panic and philosophy, but then the song pulls the camera way back.
Yeah, big shift in perspective.
We move outward from these two voices and transition to the physical space they actually inhabit. The lyrics jump to the Watchtower.
It feels almost like a hard cinematic cut, doesn't it? And a watchtower isn't just an ordinary building.
No, not at all.
It's very architectural nature, it's elevated, it's heavily guarded, and it's built specifically for surveillance. It's for looking outward and looking downward. It instantly establishes a vertical hierarchy.
Looking at the notes here, there's a very specific mapping of the social roles mentioned in this space. Up at the top of the tower, you have the princes keeping the view.
Right, the elites.
And down below, at the base, you have women and servants coming and going. And then woven into the Joker's earlier complaint, you have the businessmen and the plowmen.
When you look at the research we've gathered, a really clear picture emerges about what these roles represent. The notes use a heavy sociological term for this. They call it alienated labor.
Alienated labor. Okay, let's unpack what that means in the context of the Joker's complaint.
Well, he says people are taking his wine and digging his earth, but, and this is the key part, none of them along the line know what any of it is worth.
Ah, right.
He's not just complaining about people doing chores or stealing his stuff.
Yeah.
He's describing a deep systemic disconnect. Things are being consumed, land is being worked, but the inherent value of those things is completely misunderstood by the people interacting with them.
So people are separated from a meaningful relationship to the world they are building. Okay, before we go any further into this hierarchy, I need to weave something in here. Because looking at the Watchtower, the princes, the servants, and the businessmen, the research we're diving into outlines a pretty heavy political reading of the song.
Yes, it definitely does.
It interprets this structure as a critique of systemic disorientation and a vastly unequal social order. And I mean, just to be super clear to you listening, neither of us are taking a political stance here, left or right.
Oh, absolutely not.
We are just tracing how these original analytical notes interpret Dylan's lyrics as a staging of elite distance and weakening institutional legitimacy, just reporting the findings.
And that's a vital distinction to make. The analysis isn't about endorsing a platform. It's an analysis of the power structures built into the text itself.
Right.
The song sets up a highly stratified world where the mechanisms of observation, the princes up in the tower, remain highly visible, but their actual power and legitimacy seem to be hollowed out or just actively collapsing.
But I want to challenge this reading a little bit. Isn't it kind of a trap to over-politicize this?
How so?
Well, it's so easy to read modern anxieties into a power structure like a watchtower, but the song never actually names a government.
Sure.
It doesn't name a king or specific historical event or a policy. It doesn't try to pin a specific political label on it, like calling it a direct critique of 1960s America kind of ruined the timeless mystery of it.
You're touching on exactly what makes this song endure. And the sources emphasize this heavily. The brilliance of the song lies in its indirect critique.
Indirect critique.
Right. It doesn't give you a specific target. Instead, it perfectly captures the atmosphere of a crisis.
Just the feeling of it.
Exactly. It models that creeping feeling that massive institutions can watch events unfold in their high towers, but they can no longer control them. Or perhaps they don't even understand what's approaching the gates.
Wow, yeah.
By refusing to become reducible to a specific partisan slogan, the song remains incredibly resonant in almost any era where people feel mistrust toward their institutions.
That makes a lot of sense. So we have this crumbling social order, this unequal hierarchy staring out into the distance. But when is this collapse actually happening? If we shift from the physical space of the Watchtower to the song's sense of time, things get really intense.
They do. The notes spend a lot of time highlighting the song's prophetic register and its deep biblical resonance.
Prophetic register, like the Old Testament.
Exactly. The imagery used, the princes, the watchfulness, the looming warning, it echoes heavily with the book of Isaiah and other prophetic traditions. In Isaiah, you have watchmen stationed on walls waiting for the fall of Babylon.
Right.
But Dylan's genius here is that he evokes all this weight without ever explicitly declaring the song as scripture.
It just feels like a warning issued from within what the notes call symbolic time. Like the events in the song aren't happening on a random Tuesday at 3 p.m.
No, definitely not.
It feels like the end of days.
Precisely. And that feeling is anchored by the thief's phrase, "The hour is getting late."
That line gives me chills.
Right, because that line isn't just a weather report or a note about the sunset. It introduces fate. It introduces mortality. It creates this immense, crushing existential pressure that the window for any meaningful action is just rapidly closing.
I was trying to think of how to describe this specific type of dread, and it feels like the ultimate Sunday scaries.
The Sunday scaries, I love that.
Yeah, but like magnified by a million. It's like watching the ocean pull back right before a tsunami hits.
Yes.
The disaster hasn't physically arrived yet, but that abnormal sucking silence is utterly terrifying. The water is gone, and you know exactly what is coming to replace it. You are just frozen, waiting for the wave.
That is a perfect analogy for what the sources call being toward event.
Being toward event, that sounds intense.
It's a pretty heavy philosophical term, but let's break it down. Think of the moment you were strapped into a roller coaster and you've just reached the absolute peak of the track.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Right. You are staring down at the massive drop, but the car hasn't started falling yet. That agonizing, suspended second of anticipation is the event. The song trapped you in that exact second.
It traps you right at the peak of the drop.
Exactly. And unlike a self-help book or, a traditional narrative, the song completely refuses to offer any kind of therapeutic resolution. It doesn't give you a cure for the dread.
It just leaves you there.
Yeah. You have these ominous signs arriving from outside the visible, ordered world of the Watchtower. The two riders approaching in the distance, the wildcat growling, the wind beginning to howl.
But they never actually arrive.
Right. The song cuts to black before the riders actually reach the tower. It forces the listener to experience the fundamental human condition of having to live under immense pressure without receiving an adequate explanation for it.
Man, so if the lyrics are trapping us in this endless waiting room of doom, how does Dylan actually make us feel that tension in our bodies? Because we've dissected the words, but we have to talk about the sound.
Oh, absolutely. The music is just as important.
Let's look at the sonic severity of this track versus the approaching storm.
Well, when we look at Dylan's original 1967 recording from the John Wesley Harding album, it is incredibly spare. It is austere. The research describes the mix as having a narrow sonic corridor.
Okay, narrow sonic corridor. What does that actually mean for the listener? Like, how does the music engineer that tension?
It really comes down to the chord progression.
Yeah.
Dylan uses a repetitive harmonic pattern. It's essentially just 3 chords, C sharp minor, B, and A, and they're just looping endlessly.
Just over and over.
Yeah. Because those chords just endlessly circle back on themselves and never resolve into a big, traditional chorus, your brain is constantly waiting for a musical release that just never comes.
It feels like walking up an endless spiral staircase.
Exactly. That repetitive loop creates a deep sense of inevitability without ever rushing the listener's ear.
And Dylan's vocal delivery on that original acoustic track plays right into that. It is so restrained.
Very restrained.
He isn't screaming about the end of the world. It's not some theatrical, panicked performance. It is this measured, haunting, almost tired delivery.
And that vocal restraint leaves the interpretive space wide open.
Yeah.
The arrangement is so stripped down that the few elements that are there, the strum of the acoustic guitar, the mournful wail of the harmonica, the very subtle bass line, they all feel completely exposed.
Right.
It proves that sometimes extreme severity and quiet restraint can be far more unsettling than a loud, explosive spectacle.
But here's where it gets really fascinating. Because most people today, when they hear the title All Along the Watchtower, they don't immediately hear Dylan's quiet acoustic guitar in their heads.
No, they hear Jimi Hendrix.
Exactly. They hear Hendrix. They hear that massive, explosive, electrified guitar riff just tearing through the sky.
So I have to ask, does a cover that massive, loud, and chaotic actually blow up Dylan's original restrained meaning?
It's a great question, and the sources argue that it doesn't omigate the original meaning at all. Rather, it provides interpretive amplification in it.
Interpretive amplification. Right. This introduces two really important concepts in musicology: adaptive authorship and the elasticity of a song. What Hendrix did was take Dylan's internal, suppressed psychological tension, and he externalized the crisis.
Oh, I see. So he took the tsunami that was pulling back, and he made it crash. He literally turned the song into an audible storm.
He did. Think about the differences in the sound. Hendrix uses aggressive, driving percussion. He uses a chaotic, almost violent intro.
Yeah, you can feel the wind howling in the guitar.
Through his heavily layered guitar textures and aggressive dynamic pacing, he made the implied storm explicit. But Hendrix didn't erase the dread Dylan wrote. He just changed the route through which listeners experience it.
That's incredible.
The fact that the core architecture of the song survives this radical sonic reinterpretation, going from a sparse, eerie acoustic track to a massive, stadium-shaking electric rock epic, it shows how incredibly strong Dylan's formal discipline really is.
It doesn't break.
Exactly. The structure of the lyrics and the chords doesn't break under the weight of a totally new, aggressive sound.
It's amazing that a song can hold both of those realities at once, the quiet dread and the loud apocalypse. And that elasticity is exactly why the song has had such an incredible afterlife.
Absolutely.
Which leads us to the final piece of our puzzle today. The song's living history and this idea of productive ambiguity. We're moving away from those classic 1960s recordings to how the song has lived over decades.
Well, a song that is sung thousands of times across multiple decades naturally morphs in meaning. Right? The sources point out that Dylan has played this song live continually on his never-ending tour. And when an aging voice sings these specific words, it acquires a totally new historical resonance.
How so?
Think about it. Themes of running out of time, fate, and final warnings. They sound fundamentally different when delivered by a man in his 80s with a raspy, weathered voice compared to when he wrote them as a young man in his 20s.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The song transforms from a snapshot of immediate panic into a lifelong meditation on endurance, aging, and recurrence.
And it's not just surviving in live concerts either. This song thrives in modern digital culture, too. You see fragments of it everywhere.
You really do.
It's in movie trailers, television shows like Battlestar Galactica, video essays, TikTok clips. It's everywhere.
That is the concept of productive ambiguity at work.
Productive ambiguity.
Right. The imagery is so primal and strong, a joker, a thief, a howling wind, a watchtower, that even when you isolate those fragments, they retain their emotional charge. They are simple enough to be instantly memorable, but open enough to be constantly reinterpreted to fit whatever crisis a new generation happens to be facing.
Which brings me to a question I want to ask on behalf of everyone listening right now. We live in an era of massive information overload.
Do we ever?
We are surrounded by algorithms that feed us immediate answers, hot takes, and rigid binary choices. We want to know exactly what everything means all the time.
Immediate gratification.
Right. So why do we keep coming back obsessively to a song that stubbornly refuses to give us any easy answers?
The notes synthesize this beautifully. The song endures not despite its incompletion, but because of it.
Because it's incomplete.
Exactly. In a modern culture that constantly demands closure and easy explanations, true cultural durability often comes from providing a disciplined field of possibilities. Dylan gave us a tightly constructed atmospheric space, but he deliberately left the ending blank.
Like Mad Libs for existential dread.
Exactly. That blank space forces the audience to continue the act of interpretation long after the performance ends. The ambiguity isn't a flaw in the writing, it is the exact mechanism of its survival.
That reframes the whole thing for me. In a world demanding constant clarity where everything is neatly categorized, fed to us on a feed, and immediately explained away, there is immense power in sitting with ambiguity.
It really is.
There's value in viewing a collapsing world through multiple conflicting perspectives like the Joker and the Thief, and accepting that sometimes there is no easy answer. Sometimes you just have to sit in the tension of the approaching storm.
It requires us to build up a tolerance for the unknown, to listen to the panicked Joker and the calm Thief, and realize that neither of them might have the whole truth. But both of their voices are absolutely essential to understanding the full reality of the crisis.
I love that. And I want to leave you with a final lingering thought today, building on this whole idea of surveillance, tension, and the interpretive labor we've been talking about. We've spent this whole time looking at the Watchtower as a physical place inside the song.
Right.
But what if the Watchtower isn't a place at all? What if the Watchtower is the act of listening itself? Think about it. Every time you hit play on this track, you are the one elevated in the tower. You are the one scanning the horizon of these lyrics, waiting for a final, comforting meaning that Dylan designed to never, ever arrive. You are the one trapped at the peak of the roller coaster, watching the pressure drop, feeling the wind begin to howl, and waiting for the riders to emerge from the distance. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking out from your own watchtowers, embrace the ambiguity, and keep exploring the horizons of your own curiosity.